All right, so we're celebrating, Friday was what? What does everybody know Friday is? Good Friday, right? Everybody knows Sunday as Easter or whatever. If that offends you, sorry. But what do you do with Saturday? Come to church, have dinner, celebrate, do worship for a couple hours, really just dive in. How many of you were here with Bill and Melinda Fish? They were here last weekend. They were a powerful couple. She really ministered to me. She ministered one word that really stuck out, which was patience. They had a prophetic word over their life that they were going to see massive revival in their lives. And then they got into full-time ministry only 6 months later. So how many of you know, you need to kind of put those two together? You're like, all right, we got a word that we're going to see massive revival. 6 months later, we're into our ministry. And so they expected it to happen like 6 months in one day, right? And 18 years later, they finally saw the fulfillment of that word in their life. And so they really just, to me, epitomized patience, the word patience. So Friday's Good Friday, right? Jesus is crucified on the cross. And tomorrow we celebrate Sunday, the day of the resurrection. And so we really struggle, I think, as Christians with what I call the space between. Yeah. Let me tell you a little story. So what do you guys think happened to Jesus on that Saturday? Like I said, Good Friday, he's crucified, he's entombed. Sunday, he rises. But the space between is what I want to talk about tonight. I believe it's very important, and Mike's going to come up and share a message. This is going to be quick. This is what they call Holy Saturday. And I think, as I was praying today, I think I know what happens in the space between. It happened to me and my family back in 1992. I had just graduated from high school. You can do the math. Ooh, ouch. I just aged myself. I was thinking about college. I had a scholarship to go to play basketball. There was a season in my life that I had freedom. How many of you are young? You got some teenagers here, some teenagers here. I experienced like freedom for the first time. My dad couldn't tell me what to do. I was out doing my own thing. In fact, one night I was partying like a rock star. And I was getting ready for to go off to college. And the space between. I went out with some friends and got completely inebriated. Not proud of it. I was 18 years old. I ended up sleeping that night at the University of Minnesota, which was about 45 minutes from my house. So you call it sleeping. Other people call it passing out. But I heard a voice at about 2 in the morning. And the voice said, "Get home. Get home now. Your mother needs you right now." And I recognized that voice because that voice was my father's voice. It literally shook me. I was so undone. I jumped up, threw my shoes on, raced 45 minutes back home until I arrived. Normally at that time of night, there would be the lights off, everybody's sleeping, but the lights were all on in my house. The basement lights were on, and I went down the stairs, didn't really notice anything, and I went into my basement room, and I noticed murmuring out in the living room. So I went out there and I saw my brother was laying prone on the couch. My sister was curled up in a ball weeping. And my mom came up and said, "Brent, I need to talk to you." She was there as well at 2 in the morning. They were all wide awake, which shocked me because I'm like, why is my whole family awake at 2 in the morning in the basement? And she said, "Brent, your father had a heart attack tonight." And I'm sitting there going, okay. Well, let's get to the hospital. What are we doing here? This is a waste of time. We need to get to the hospital. And she said, "Brent, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your father did not make it. He passed away tonight." And the space between those two sentences was like an eternity. It literally felt like it lasted my whole life. The space between my emotions all of a sudden collapsed. I literally experienced every single emotion that you can imagine right now. Name it: love, hate, anger, joy, peace, and even some emotions I don't know if they have names. And they all happened within a few seconds. All I remember is punching the laundry room door in our basement because it was thin. And I knew if I punched it, it would probably break. And it did. And I went into that laundry room, which was just concrete and a washer and a dryer, and I just began to scream. I think yell. I don't really remember, but what I do remember is my mom raced in after me. She grabbed me. She embraced me. My brother lifted up my head. And my little sister, I think she would have been 14 at the time, began to weep in that space between. right then I got an instant download from the Lord. I had just been saved maybe 7 months before that. He said, rally your family now. And I think that's where we're at as a family. There's this space between to just rally this family. So I wrote everything down so I don't get emotional. So he showed me to build unity. And right away I grabbed my family. I just pulled my brother. We got together like a huddle of a basketball team. And I just said, come here, we need to all get together right now. We need to have nothing come in between us. Nothing will ever separate us. I just started making these declarations. We will make it together. See, my dad wasn't just the dad. He was the sole provider of the home. He was the strong man in the house. And he passed away that very night. But the Holy Spirit began to move through me that night. Right as the sun was about to rise, the family finally got weary and went to bed that night. And as I was laying in my bed, there was that space between awake and asleep. And I've never heard a grown man wail in my life until I heard my brother. He was 21 at the time, and he started wailing. I mean, wailing. If you've ever heard someone wail, it's different than crying. Yes. And I could hear him cry that night. And as he cried out, all I needed to do was cry out to the Lord. And the Lord said, get up now. Bring him into the kingdom. So I got the privilege of leading my brother the same night my dad died into the kingdom of heaven. I seriously remember asking him, do you want this pain to go away? And he said, yes. And as we began to pray, I literally could feel the angels just swooping around him, celebrating right in that very moment. He was born again that very night in the space between. So the peace of the Lord came. My brother finally went to bed, and I went out to the backyard. It was just dawn. The sun was just coming up in the space between night and day. And I began to speak out loud to the Father. I remember it was a June or July day, so I had nothing but like basketball shorts on, and that was it. And I remember yelling out to God in the back of my neighborhood, I know you have a reason for this. It must be great because the pain is so great. And then I think I must have touched his heart because I just started yelling, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you. I just kept saying, I trust you, I trust you. And right when I said that, in that space between my prayers and really what was a demand, I saw the sun come up and it started to move towards me. It like left its orbit and started to move towards me fast, kind of very furiously, as I just kind of literally stood there naked before the Lord. And when the sun came to me, it was like 30 feet in diameter, about the size of a house. I literally felt like I could touch it. It was just the glory of the sun, the S-O-N, the sun. Time didn't matter. I mean, nothing mattered. I was literally in his presence. And I remember I spoke out loud, my mother is in my brother and I's hands, but you better take care of my sister. I had a 14-year-old sister, and I just made that command and that demand. I just cried out. It seemed appropriate to make some commands and to make some demands upon the Lord at that time because I had nowhere else to go. My brother was just saved in the space between. My sister was taken care of because I made that declaration in the space between. And my mom has blessed me and many others in that space between. My words that night, they were sown into the glory of the Lord in the space between. And tonight, I just want you to take a few moments because I believe my entire life can be defined in those in-between space moments. I believe that's where many of you are at tonight. Right now, right here, in the space between moment. It's a holy Saturday, the day a lot of Christians really don't know what to do with it. Friday night, they call it a Good Friday. Sunday night, they know what to do. But tonight, between his death and burial, and as we celebrate his resurrection tomorrow, I just pray that you seek sowing something into death and allowing it to resurrect today. That you would sow into that same glory that rested on me on July 19th, 1992, and that you come boldly before the Son, before Jesus, and speak to him like a man talks to a friend in the space between. Sow something into a resurrected life today. Sow something into life. Sow something into provision if you need provision. sow something into revelation, relationships. That's why we've gathered here tonight. But that time is now. I'm going to pray as those envelopes have been passed out. We're going to take up an offering, but I'm not going to present it to the Lord. I want you to position yourself to make some demands upon him. I firmly believe that the demand I made upon the Lord that day to protect my sister not only brought her into the kingdom, brought her a husband, 4 children, all born again, powerful men and women of God. And I believe tonight that if you can just enter into that space between yesterday of Good Friday, tomorrow of resurrection, stand and look at the Lord and make demands upon you sowing today, that he will honor that. Father, I'm just, as those envelopes go out right now, we're going to bring those forward in just a moment. I just really feel there's a gathering, a unity together of family. That Easter, that his resurrection would mean something more than ever before. That it literally is life and death when death comes knocking at your door. It literally is life and death when you feel like everything's been ripped away from you. It literally is life and death when you feel like there's no hope for your kids or for your family. But you keep standing on the promises. You keep yelling out the demands. You keep stating his word back to them, and he will honor it. Many of you have financial needs. I don't have a fancy financial message other than I know that if he can save my family, if he can save my sister, if he can take care of us through provision and revelation, he can surely meet your need. I don't care what it is. So as you bring your tithes, your offerings forward, I'm going to just have you make your own demand in your heart or out loud. If you feel like you need to yell at them, go for it. If you just need to get on the floor, whatever you need to do. And I'm going to have Mike come up and administer something that I think is just vital to this service tonight. So we just bring those forth here. I want you to give with a joyful heart. I often get asked a lot, they say, Brent, what happened that day? I said that the day my dad died was the greatest day of my life. And people look at me like I might be a little bit mentally ill. But when I mean great, it isn't like good great, like good and great. That's not what I mean. Great like massive. Great like big, great like huge, great like the biggest thing that changed the way I saw everything. And I believe if you had that perspective of him as he rose from the grave, that's what the disciples felt that night. So come on up, bring your tithes, your offerings unto a risen Christ, unto a risen Lord.